Hey guys, we're here with Samantha from All Things Possible Ministries.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I love that name.
Thank you.
Just All Things Possible.
Yes.
I mean, did you come up with that? Was that yours?
No, it's actually a nonprofit that I work for. It's
Okay.
a Christian faith-based nonprofit, so it's based off of a Bible verse that says, "With God, all things are possible." And so it was founded by Victor and Eileen Marks. They just celebrated 20 years, their 20-year anniversary of the nonprofit in October.
Wow, congratulations.
I know. That's a big deal for
20 years, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm the director of empowerment and outreach. I'm based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And so we help women and children that have been sexually exploited, trafficked, and abused.
Okay.
We help not only the victims, but their immediate families as well. And All Things Possible as a whole helps provide aid and trauma relief to women and children that have suffered through different forms of traumas. So
Okay.
we have a safe house in Cambodia. We also have a safe house in Iraq. And so we serve across the globe, not just in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to get all those details for sure. But I'm curious, how did you get involved in that space? Did you have your own personal experience with it?
Yeah, so I actually started my own nonprofit in 2018 called Ruby's LV. And last year in August, ATP absorbed us. And the reason I had started my own nonprofit is because I myself am a sex industry survivor. And so about 16 years ago, I started serving with another nonprofit called Hookers for Jesus in Las Vegas, Nevada. The CEO and founder of that one is trafficking survivor. Her name is Annie Lobert. And so I met her at church. I would always see her running in like during worship. And she always had like a crew of women like running in with her. And I remember the first time I saw her, I looked at my husband because by trade, I've been a makeup artist for 25 years. So I told my husband, I said, I think she does hair or something. Like she just always looked like perfectly coiffed. Like her hair was always done. Her makeup was always done. She always had a cute, like coordinated outfit. And so I was just like, I think she does hair or something. And Joe was like, no, I don't think so. And so, yeah, that's how I started. I started talking to Annie. We became really good friends. She was the first person that I ever shared my story with.
Yeah.
In great detail, actually. And so I felt really comfortable and safe sharing with her. And the fact that I was in church and that I was able to share with somebody was something that I didn't think could ever really happen.
Yeah.
And so from there, I started serving with her and her nonprofit. And then after that, I went and I worked like in the law field for a little bit. And I love working in law. In a perfect world, I'd have enough time to go and become an attorney and eventually a judge. I would like to do that, but I just don't have the time for it. So
I could see you doing that.
I love it.
You're very strong and
Thank
passionate.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It's my jam. So, but I like being behind the scenes. Like I'm comfortable. Like that's why I was so comfortable with Annie because I was her executive assistant. And so I'm like a really good like cheerleader and keeping people on task and keeping a schedule. And that is my jam.
Yeah.
I love making other people's lives easier.
I love that.
I just love doing that. And it's rare when you meet people that like doing that because a lot of people don't like to be an executive assistant. They're like, oh, hell no.
Yeah, I definitely need you in my life. I need some help with some things. So for you, are you in recovery or?
So here's the thing, right? For me, yes, I used, so my dad died when I was 16. My dad,
sorry.
Thank you. My dad had lymphoma cancer in his stomach. And it was drawn out kind of him being sick and whatnot. And so I saw him suffer for like 9 months and really just deteriorate. And so after he passed, he was a veteran. And so after he passed, and he was very strict. So when he passed, 2 weeks later, I was at the club. Like I was 16. I was going to all ages clubs.
In Vegas?
In Hollywood.
In Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Hollywood. Then we moved to the San Fernando Valley. And then when my daughter was 2.5, we moved out to Vegas. So it's funny because my life really shaped up when we went to Vegas, which is like doesn't happen for a lot of people.
Yeah, usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, usually it's the other way around. So so we lived in Hollywood, and then my dad got us like on Section 8, and we lived in Sherman Oaks, California. And then he passed. 2 weeks later, I'm partying out in the clubs, drinking, doing drugs, a lot of acid, cocaine, smoking weed, a lot of drinking. I'm Irish, English, German, and Guatemalan.
Wow.
So my tolerance has always been like stupid high.
Yeah.
And so when I did stuff, I did a lot of it. And at the moment when you're young, you're not thinking about the long-term consequences, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I just feel like there came a point where I was just like, I am tired. Like I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's hard. It's hard to find and because I am a Christian, it's hard for me to find an identity in something outside of Christ. So to identify myself, as an addict or in recovery, like it's hard for me to identify that because my identity to me now is the daughter of the King. And I know that sounds corny, like for some people,
not
like
at all.
It's just like the reality. Like it's almost like those things to me are like a scarlet letter. And I don't need to wear a scarlet letter anymore. Like that was my past. I worked in the sex industry. I did drugs. I was promiscuous. I was all these things. But that doesn't define me. What defines me now is who I am in Christ. And that for me has been the one thing that has really helped me heal on so many different levels, especially mentally. And so that's why I don't really shrink back from sharing about that, because I tried everything else. I tried more drugs. I tried more alcohol. I tried more men. I tried more women. Like I tried everything. And I tried, the universe, and I tried all the crystals and the rocks and the, whatever you could burn up in the house, to make it smell good. And it's like, and I also have a background in witchcraft. So I came out of the occult also. And so I tried all these things, evil things, working with demons. Like I tried all these things. And so finally, actually, when we lived in Vegas, we were coming up on Easter, and, a lot of people get invited to church, or they're more apt to going during Easter and Christmas. We call them creasters.
Yeah.
Christmas and Easter. And so somebody invited me to church, to a Christian church for Easter. And just at the invitation, I started crying. And we were like in the cafeteria of a casino, employee dining room. And so I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that somebody would think, to me at that moment, it felt like somebody thought that I was worthy enough to go to church. And so I was like overwhelmed because I had so much baggage of brokenness with me, right? And so started going, and that's where I met Annie. And shortly after that, I'm scared because I'm like, oh my gosh, I am a former drug addict. At the time I was like, I'm a former drug addict. I worked in the sex industry. Like if these people knew where I came from, I don't know that I would still be allowed in here. And so meeting Annie was really a blessing, because she was like, I was trafficked here in Vegas. And I was like, what does that mean? Because we don't use that terminology like within the culture, right? And we use, pimping and hoeing and blah, 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 all these other terms. And so she was like, I was pimped out. And I was like, what? And then she started sharing with me. And then I started doing like outreaches and stuff with her. And that's really how I started. I'm sorry. I think that was a long-winded answer to your one question that happened 5 minutes ago, guys.
No. It's great. And I love you sharing your experience like that, because to each their own, what your experience is and what works for you is what works for you. And I mean, I love all the different, rooms, let's call them, that people, find their recovery in. But that doesn't mean that we need to push it down someone's throat that it's going to work. And there's a lot of people that even write us that say like, hey, I don't like calling myself an alcoholic and I don't like doing this. And is there other options for me? Like, what else is there out there? And I think like your journey shows that there is something else out there.
Yeah.
Were you always a Christian, or did this?
No. So I grew up in a Catholic home, which is very different from Christianity. I know people try to mesh the two together, but, in Catholicism, it's a lot of like, you have to do this to receive forgiveness. You have to do that to receive forgiveness. You got to go confess your sins to this guy in a booth, blah, blah, blah. And so, it was, to me, it was a very dead relationship. I knew of God and I was scared of God, but I didn't know God and I didn't know Jesus. And so I think when I had that revelation, I was so tired. I'll never forget. And that's the one thing I do ask. I do always keep in prayer. Like I ask God, like, I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget how bad it was and how desperate I was at that moment, because I remember they did the service and then they did the altar call and he was like, you can have a relationship with Jesus. And I was like, what? Like I ran to that altar because I was like, if this is like being given out and there's no expectation,
Yeah.
I was like, I need this right now, because the reality is my husband and I had our daughter, and I had all this unprocessed trauma and all this baggage that I was just carrying with me. And that came out in toxic behaviors. I was not a healthy person. I don't think I was that healthy or great of a mom. I don't think that I was that healthy or great of a wife, a daughter, a friend. And so, and I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to be somebody that added to people's lives and not took from people's lives. And I think that when you have a lot of unprocessed trauma and you haven't tapped into even starting your healing process, you're like, you suck the life out of people.
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing to admit, right?
Yeah.
Like to this day, that's my, man, there's I always say this, like I would die of starvation before I called somebody and told them that I needed a loaf of bread. And I've had people say, oh, you're being prideful, you're being this, you're being that. And it's like, no, I don't want to be a burden. I think that I was not a healthy person for so long that it really took from people's lives instead of adding to it. And so I just don't do it,
And now you do the complete opposite.
Yes.
I love that. What was the healing process like for you?
It took many years and it was gruesome. Like it was not pretty. It wasn't pretty for myself. It wasn't pretty for my husband. I had to tell my mom what wound up happening, because at the time when I was with Annie, we wound up doing a docuseries for Discovery ID.
Okay.
And so we filmed for like a year straight. And so they were in the home. And I remember I was dreading telling my mom. And then right before, I think like a week before it was supposed to air, I was like, I got to tell her. And it was like the day before Thanksgiving. And that did not go very good. She was like, I guess I just failed as a mom and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no, it's not you, And yeah, there is some truth to when people say children are a reflection of their parents. In some cases, I think that there is some truth. However, with myself, I don't think that I was a reflection of my parents. I think I was a reflection of my circumstances and the lack of parents, right? Because my dad died when I was 16. My mom immediately starts working as a housekeeper in Beverly Hills, cleaning homes, working, 8-10 hour days. She doesn't drive. So then she has to take the bus there and coming back. And so essentially I lost both my parents in one go, you know? And we didn't have a community. I didn't have like a family that was there to kind of support and, you know, check up on me and whatnot. And so I think that I just fell victim to my circumstance.
Yeah.
And wanting to have better. And at the time, the sex industry was way different than what it is now. I mean, now it's like, it's up in people's bios and it's like, this is what I do. And
what do you think about that?
I am like, and here's the thing too. I don't want listeners to hear this and go, oh my God, she's judgy. Like, cause people hear the word Christian and automatically I get like 10,000 labels, you know, assigned to me. And it's like, why don't you have a conversation with me first? Then you can make your own assessment. My worry about that is that that's not going away. That's never going to go away. And I think you and I had a conversation at lunch about this too. When you have kids, you know, the internet is there. Like, Jenny, I don't think if the internet existed when I was working, I don't think I could have mentally survived that. I think I would have killed myself. Because that was really hard.
Yeah.
Sharing with my kids what I did, you know, at age appropriate times. And so for me, it was just, you know, sharing with them at age appropriate times.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I did. This is why I do what I do now. This is who I serve. Like, you know, and then being so public, right? Doing interviews, doing TV. And so, and we're heavily involved in our church and within church communities. And so I didn't want for somebody to come back and tell my kids, you know, oh, hey, I heard your mom was a blah, 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 you know, and they didn't know. So I think for me, that was probably one of the hardest parts, you know, of healing and pushing through and overcoming. And the reality is it's the truth. And I'm a firm believer that part of healing and part of maintaining a healthy frame of mind is just speaking the truth. Like whether you like it or not, like a fact is a fact.
Yeah.
Like,
and how did they react to it?
They were very receptive. Valerie was, you know, I shared with her first and I said, you know, I won't speak, you know, at church. I won't do like interviews. Like I'll cut. We were already filming. I said, we can stop filming. I'll cut it out. And she was like, no, you should share. You know, you should share what you've gone through. I think she was like 12 or 13. And she was just like, do you know how many friends of mine that I have that have been like sexually abused or this or that? And she's like, I think that your story would really help them because people are not open about stuff like this, especially in church. And so I was like, whoa, that was a really mature response. And I was a mess. I'm like ugly crying, snot, like pouring out of my nose. Like, and she was just like, no, I think it's great. And so, and then that hurt, but what hurt even more was telling my son. And I think because I had never had healthy relationships with men, you know, other than my husband, right? Like, and even that in the beginning was very strained because he had unprocessed trauma. I had unprocessed trauma. And so it was scary telling my son, you know, because boys look at their mom a different way. And so I just felt like I had already let him down, like before he was even born. I was like, dang, what did I do? So I just told him. And he just started crying. And he was like, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
He's like, I wish I could make it better for you. And I thought that was so sweet.
So sweet.
Because I was really ready for either one of them, you know, because I did it at 2 separate times because there's a 5-year gap with both of them. And so I just figured I would mentally prepare myself for them to be like, what the hell were you thinking? Like just going off.
Yeah.
You know, what is this going to do for me now? Like, you know, I have to deal with people saying that they've you know, you were this or you were that, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, to think of, you know, the girls that are working now and they're just so open with like their OnlyFans and they're this and they're that. And it's like in their bios, in their social medias. I'm like, as a mom and as somebody that has been out of the industry for 20 years, I just worry.
Yeah, I do too, you know, and this conversation is so important because a lot of people, you know, they're not thinking about those things. They're just so in the moment and so impulsive, and society is making it okay in a lot of ways. And it's easy to do it now. You know, it's like right there, you can just do it. And I think down the road, they're going to have these hard conversations and there's going to be so much guilt and shame associated with that. And like you said, if, you know, your state of mind that you were in then, if all that stuff was out there to see, like you might not be here today because you would have taken yourself out. And that's what's so scary. I had to have that conversation with my son, and the stuff is out there of me and it's all over Google. And thankfully, thank God, I did get a similar reaction, you know, where he was supportive and encourages me to share my story. But I still have those days where I feel bad because his friends all look me up, you know, the girls and the guys, and it's embarrassing, you know, and I've done a lot of work on myself, but it's still like, great. You know, he's got these kids come over to the house and they've seen me naked, you know, because they look me up on the internet, because why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They're teenagers.
I mean, but that's normal. Like we meet somebody and we're like,
Google everyone.
Let me see what they're all about. Like, let me see what they're doing. And so
and those kids' parents. And it's just like, you just really need to be thinking about those things now before you step into that arena.
And that's why I think it's so important for us to speak on those type of things. And it's not coming from a place of judgment.
Not at all.
It's not from being hypercritical or this and that. The reality is that they're being spoon-fed a facade of normalization of hypersexuality and this false sense of like, this is feminism at its finest.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me?
That's
what
crazy.
the heck are you talking about?
Yeah.
So when I see girls doing that, I mean, as a mom and as a survivor of the sex industry, I'm just like, it grieves my heart.
Me too.
It grieves my heart. And then what makes it even more sad is when I see those same girls getting hyper defensive about like, well, you're just mad because you can't do it or you can't do it anymore and da 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 da. You know, at that back when I was working, the big movie was Players Club with Jamie Foxx and you know, it was about a strip club and this and that, and it was like, you know, you got to use what you got to get what you need and blah 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 blah. And it's like, it's just seeing the past 20 years how things have like
evolved.
And it's so bad.
Yeah.
Man, I thought we were bad back then.
It's so bad. And it's gotten so bad so fast. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a million times worse. It just went.
But it's not even just that it's bad. It's so normalized.
Well, that's it. Yet it's normalized, yet it's not reality.
No.
There's no maintaining that lifestyle. It's not real.
No.
It's a facade.
Yeah.
And people are just like, okay, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, I worked at an all-nude strip club in North Hollywood, California, and I remember I'd open the door from the locker room and I'd hit that carpet, and it's like ding, like you just, you know, you put on your face and your whole countenance changes. I mean, I can only assume it's like that when you're hitting on the scene to film, right?
Totally
you're like
same.
You walk in and you're like ding, like you know, it's just, man, for that not to register with girls, with anybody working in the sex industry, when they're like, oh, I love doing this, and you know, but if you loved doing it that much, subconsciously and consciously, you wouldn't have to put on that face when you hit the floor. Like, you just wouldn't.
Exactly.
So I worry, and the thing is that we'll never see the data on people that commit suicide coming out of the sex industry. We'll never see that data.
Boom. But it is high.
It's very high. I mean, you know people that have killed themselves. I know people that have killed themselves. I have a friend of mine, Joshua Broom, who was also in the porn industry. I think he said like the first 2 or 3 years that he was out, he knew 30 people that had committed suicide from the industry.
So
and I'm like,
sad.
You'll never see those numbers.
And I've been posting some stuff around this topic about my past, and I've had several people reach out, but it's not the actual person involved in that industry. It's a friend or a loved one.
Yeah.
Messaging me saying like they're so deep in this and they want out, but they're scared. They don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
You know, what do they do? And that's where you step in, right?
Yeah.
So you counsel friends and loved ones that reach out.
Yeah.
What does someone do that wants to get out of this business and doesn't know how to live life outside of that world?
I think that's where it's really important to have mentorship. And so the common word is mentorship, right? In Christianity, we call it discipleship, right? And so that to me is key, even when people are still in whatever they're in, right? Because when you're in it, you don't self-identify. Like there's girls that are being trafficked right now, and I see them from time to time, you know, either out on the Blade or in the casinos or whatever, or at the mall, you know, and I'm like, hey, you know, catching up with them. How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And they just, you know, they don't self-identify that they're being trafficked. And so I think that that's important, is developing those relationships with people when they're still in what they're in, but it's a healthy balance of not enabling also.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with me, is that I love you too much to not tell you the truth. You may not like the truth, but the reality is a fact is a fact. And I can't sit here and sugarcoat things, because the reality is I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. I don't even know that, you know, I won't, you know, die in a car accident on the way out. Like, so for me, that's how I approach every relationship and every person that is either still in it, trying to get out of it. I have like one of our girls, I've known her for 10 years now. We've worked with her for 10 years, but the first 2 years, I never spoke to her.
Oh, wow.
It was her mom that had reached out to us.
Yeah.
Because her mom had both of her little girls while she was being trafficked from state to state. And so, yeah, the first 2 years, we never even spoke. And so, and that's really the hard part, is getting like in the muck and the mire and like in the not pretty parts of people's lives and then sticking around.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like it can take quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't like someone going to treatment and you get them on an airplane and you get them into detox.
Yeah.
I mean, this girl, it was 2 years before you even spoke to her.
Yeah. And so, and everybody's different. And so you know, the typical thing is people will be like, well, what do you do? And how do you help? And, you know, what do you recommend we do? And it's like, I can't give you like a blueprint that can be applied to each and every single case, because the reality is everybody's cases is so complex and so different. And depending on what type of traumas they have, what type of childhood traumas, do they have childhood sexual trauma? Like what, and most of the time when people are in the sex industry, there's a high percentage of us that have childhood sexual
Very
trauma.
high. Yeah.
And so, because it creates that foundation of like, well, you know, it's already, so might as well make money on it. Right. And so yeah, so I think that's why it's so important to get to know every single person and the whole backstory. And for that backstory to come out, it takes a while sometimes. I mean, I have one girl right now, I've known her, I think, for like 8 years. And I think the first 3 years that I knew her, I didn't even know what her story was. And then little by little, she was like, oh yeah, I was adopted. Oh, well, before I got adopted, I was bouncing around from foster home to foster home. And then I was in one foster home and they trafficked me and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, what? And I just wait for people to feel comfortable. I pray each time I go and meet with somebody. I let God lead the conversation. I don't push anything. And that's the cool thing too. Like people, you know, that's why I don't ever come off like I'm going to force God down somebody's throat, because the reality is God gave us free will and he's not forcing a relationship on us.
Yeah.
So that to me is a great guide to go off of, because I'm like, I'm not going to force a relationship on this girl. I'm not going to force her to share with me, because the reality is she's been forced to do so many things. I'm not going to be another person on that list that forced her to share, you know, really dark pieces of her life with me. So I just take my time. But the reality is it's not fun and it doesn't feel good. And yeah, do I absorb a lot of secondary trauma?
The next thing I was going to ask you.
Yes, I do. Do I have guardrails up to address that? Yes, I do.
And what are those guardrails?
So I float a lot.
Okay.
So I go floating. For those of you that don't know, you basically go in a tank. There's like, I forgot how many pounds of Epsom salt in there. And so you literally can't sink. I mean, but there's not that much water in there. It's like this much water. And it's total sensory deprivation. You don't have to do it like that if you don't want to, but I typically do. So it shuts everything off so that I can just shut off my brain. And so my therapist actually told me about it. I thought it was stupid when he told me about it. I was like, I have to pay money to go and float.
Yeah.
It's almost as annoying as having to pay for therapy when other people have done stuff to you, right? And so I'm like, great, okay. But yeah, I float probably like 2 to 3 times a month. I see my therapist 2 to 3 times a month, 2 hours at a time. I get massages. I make sure that I take care of myself. I do draw healthy boundaries. And so with some girls, depending on what's going on, if they're consistently making bad choices, like, then I'm like, hey, you know, this is where I'm at with this. When you want to start being serious, like, and that's the thing about me. And that sets me kind of apart from other nonprofits that say that they're anti-trafficking. You know, a lot of nonprofits say they're anti-trafficking, but all they do is put up billboards and pass out pamphlets, and they're not really working with a victim. They don't really impact a victim's life. So for me, drawing those healthy boundaries, it just helps me navigate, okay, like, I only have this much to give out. I can't overextend myself, because the reality is I can't want it more than the actual person does.
Yeah.
And I want it really bad for them, right? And especially as a mom. And that's the thing too, is that I always tell people I make mom decisions. And the reality is you're not always going to like the decision that your mom makes for you.
Yeah.
But
true.
And a healthy mom, right? Like, because some people did not have healthy moms. So I get that. But the reality is when a healthy mom is making a decision or helping you with a decision that's going to impact your life, not just right now, but for the long term, you're probably not going to love it. But I'm not here to enable. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say something that makes you feel good. Like, but I'm also not going to be a jerk. But the reality is I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you the truth. And the reality is I've been out of the industry for 20 years. I've been clean and sober, right? For all this time too. I've raised my own biological kids. We've also fostered 2 other children for 5 years that were in and out of our home that belonged to a gal that had severe mental health issues from all her unprocessed trauma from being trafficked since she was 14.
Wow.
We've also brought in other people's children for long periods of time to come live with us, get them on track, and then give them back. And so, and by the grace of God, all those successes to me are huge wins, because one healthy person sends a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
And so, but one unhealthy person also sends a ripple effect. And so for us, being able to look at what we've done so far, and I say we, like, because it's my whole family that's involved. It's my husband, it's my kids. My daughter is now my assistant too. And so, and that's another thing too, you know, for me bringing her on, she just completed her 90 days and I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think you were going to make it. Because this is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And that's the thing, is that I'm not that kind of mom that's like, oh my God, my kid is great at everything. It's like,
right.
I need to tell you the truth. Like, you're wasting your time on this. I would move on to something else, you know? And so, I know for a fact that that's what makes us different, is that we provide a very healthy family environment for those that we serve. They see how our family works and how we communicate, how we treat one another, and the reality of it too, you know, how we deal with stresses, how we're dealing with all the different components of, you know, all the different cases that we're working on. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, I think when people see all that and see that, oh, okay, she knows when to say no. She also has these healthy boundaries. Like, it's, I have to be able to live what I'm telling somebody else to do. And so I think that having all of those things put into place, it really showcases, oh, okay, she's not just saying, you know, she's not just saying like, you need to take a break, or you need to have self-care, or you need to go to therapy. Like, if when I tell a girl, like, you need serious therapy, and they look at me like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I go to therapy all the time. And they're like, oh, you know, then they're like, oh, it's not a dig.
I'm doing it too.
It's not a dig. It's like, this is what has kept me, you know, alive for all this time.
Yeah. And with All Things Possible, you guys offer resources, because as I can imagine, a lot of it comes down to money. You know, like, how do I get out of this? I don't know how to live, you know, financially. Maybe they're in legal troubles, and maybe they're addicted, you know, to something. So what does that look like for you guys when you're helping somebody through, you know, that whole process?
So everything is a case-by-case basis. If somebody is struggling with addiction, then we'll refer them out to somewhere where they need to go to detox and whatnot. If somebody needs to go to a safe house, I don't have a safe house, but Annie does. You know, they have the Destiny House. So we'll send them over there. If they're looking for, you know, they've gotten out, but they're like struggling, you know, we have different resources and programs that we can help them with to get food. A lot of the girls want mentorship in how to become financially independent. What does that mean? How do I balance my checkbook? How do I budget myself? How do I fix my credit score? You know, I want to start my own, you know, eyelash business or whatever. I want to become a hairdresser. And so all these things, and there's still things that I'm learning as well. So as I'm learning, now I have even more so of an eagerness to learn certain things about business, because I want to be able to show the girls as well. And so, there's just different resources and services that we provide, also depending on how serious the gal is. Because if not, you know, if I get a cold call and they're like, hey, I need a room for tonight because I just left, you know, my dude, and it's like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how do I know that your dude didn't have you call me because you guys don't have any money, and I'm going to pay for that hotel room, and God forbid, you know, he's trafficking you through that room and a trick kills you. Whose name is that under? So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's another, like, one of the mom decisions that I got to make. Like, what is feasible and what is not, you know? And so, and there is a certain level of risk and danger.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because, you know, obviously there is a lot of risk and danger. How do you keep yourself safe? And how do these girls, I know you're saying there's the safe houses, but when they get out, you know, do these pimps and try to come back for them, like surrounding that space and yourself? How do you keep everybody safe as far as you can, you know?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that people Google Victor Marks.
Okay.
I mean,
Google him.
I would Google him. In the words of Victor himself, he recently just said that to somebody when he was in a very bad situation and law enforcement was trying to remove him out of it. And he was like, Google me. And I was like, that was such a good response. Because he wasn't being like cocky. He's just like, no, I know how to attend to this situation and be safe. And so, you know, I won't disclose everything, but we are more than capable of defending ourselves and defending those that we're serving and that are around us. And, mess around and find out, I guess.
Because I would imagine that's a big thing for girls, even just calling you. like just terrified that
Yeah.
they're going to get, beaten, killed, whatever.
Yeah. Well, usually if they're contacting us, they've already left their dude.
Okay.
Because that is, you can't call somebody,
Yeah.
And so, there was an instance one time when I helped a girl leave her pimp, and her mom had passed when she was 16, and she had like a guitar that her mom had given her. And I remember he was upstairs in the house sleeping, and she was like, I really got to get my medication, and I got to get this guitar out of the house. And we were at church. And so we left church, went to the house. He was upstairs sleeping. I remember walking into that garage. I remember walking into that garage. I don't know how to describe it. We don't do anything that's dumb or like not well thought out. I mean, there are some instances where it's like spur of the moment, but I'll be honest with you. I don't take one step in a direction that God has not called me to take a step into.
Yeah.
Because anything outside of God's will, I don't want to stand in that. And so if he tells me no, then I'm like, I can't do it, but maybe we can figure out something else. But it's been rare when that happens. Like I feel pretty confident in everything that we've done thus far. And, anything that will pop up, I know that, as long as God's covering us and calling us to do it, we're going to be fine. I mean, Victor and his wife and one of their children and a small portion of our team just went out to Israel, to do trauma relief over there for the children that have seen a lot. And, at first I'm like, cause they're like spiritual parents to me. And so at first I'm like, trying not to have a panic attack thinking about them going out there. And I cried, I spent a good half hour of crying and being scared. And then I was like, Lord, if you're calling them, I know you're going to bring them back home.
Yeah.
I've lost both of my parents, my dad when I was 16, and then my mom passed away 2 years ago. And so,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And so for me, that's a sensitive topic, right? But I think that when you're prepared and not paranoid, and when you have wisdom, and like I said, when God is calling you to do something, like there's really, I've never felt like an ounce of fear doing something.
Yeah.
I just don't. So, but for some of the girls, it's a very delicate situation. Like one girl right now, we're going up to Salt Lake City, Utah, because they took her case over there to go after her trafficker. They wouldn't take the case in Las Vegas. So we just started going to every other city and every other state where she was trafficked until somebody took in Salt Lake City took it. So shout out to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, we're going over there, and there's a possibility that, he'll have family coming around or blah, blah, blah. But
well, thank you for everything you do. God bless you and your family and your friends. And I mean, just all of it. It's God's work that you're doing.
Thank you.
What do you say to people out there that are having a hard time connecting to God?
I mean, I get it. I understand. Some people have been through such severe trauma, and that question arises, where were you? Where were you when I was being raped? Where were you when I was being molested? Where were you when I was being beaten? Where were you when I needed food? Where were you when I needed to make money to pay for my rent or cover my bills? I understand those questions towards God. The great thing about having those questions is that you can actually take them to God and ask those things. And I think that when you're ready to be vulnerable and honest, not just with yourself, but being transparent about how you really feel towards God, I know that there's a lot of breakthrough that happens within that. And it doesn't feel good, and for some people it takes them multiple times, a long time, and it's not God that has walked away from us, it's us that's walked away from God. And the reality is we live in a fallen world, and he did give us free will, and there's evil people that live here and that do horrible, vile things to others, but you can find solace and healing and patience and love with God. And I know that that's gonna, some people are gonna be like, oh my God, that's so corny, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling you, I tried everything. I literally tried everything. And the cool part is watching other people that have tried everything else too, when they finally go, you know what, I'm just going to try God because I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And then they have that breakthrough.
Well, you're a walking example.
Thank you.
And what you've done with your life and the lives that you've touched and the ripple effect of that is just beautiful.
Thank you.
With All Things Possible Ministries, if someone out there wants to contact you, where would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, my email is super easy. It's Samantha@victormarks.com.
Can you spell that?
Victor Marks is VICTORMARX.com. And then it's just my first name, Samantha. Or you can visit the website, victormarks.com. And there's different ways that you can reach out to us there. Whether you're still in the industry, if you're thinking about getting in the industry, if you've gotten out of the industry, if you're a family member and has somebody in the industry, I mean, yeah, feel free to reach out to us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's been a joy.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.